What's up, guys? Welcome back to another live or how to beat live low stakes poker video. Today's video, kind of part two. The last video you see on the channel, we looked at how to play out of position in PLO, and it's more like about playing out of position in a common spot, a single raised pot multi-way situation, high SPR. Well, felt like it made sense to look at kind of the inverse of that. Now we are in position in a high SPR situation. Some differences, though. Out of position, I talked about how if we interacted with the board at all, it actually felt like it made a lot of sense to bet either like a third or quarter pot, small sizing. We'll go with one sizing, and bet with most anything that we want to bet with that is either for value or kind of like semi-bluffs, connecting with the board. I think that I mentioned in that video due to the fact that our opponents do not actually stab or bluff or play aggressively enough in position in PLO without just having like a hand and playing very ABC. Because of that, it makes a lot more sense to actually do a lot more betting from out of position and bet folding and leading into them, even if we're not the pre-flop aggressor, just because the equities run closer together. If they're going to play more passive and not stab as often, not bluff raise us off of our equity as often, because they either do a lot of calling or folding, we know exactly where they're at in the hand, obviously. And that allows us to play a lot of times perfect poker on future streets, even when we're out of position, which is a really hard thing to do in PLO. So we will take advantage of that in out of position. If you haven't watched the video before this, go take a look at that so you can see more of that. When we're in position, however, the beauty of being in position in PLO is we get to realize a lot of equity by being able to check back a lot of hands that want to be able to check back, and in the form of like a lot of backdoor draws, hands that might be good enough to like bet fold out of position, but they become more like checkbacks in position to be able to actually realize that equity and keep the pot a little smaller. This is a situation, however, where a common one where we get a couple limpers. I raised them. I believe it was to 25 pre-flop. It's a 5-5 game. The big blind decides to call, and then one of the limpers calls. So we have a multi-way high SPR situation, and we have one of the more common hands that we'll end up with, single-suited aces here. Now, this is actually a similar board to the last video, but we do have one of those dry, disconnected boards with a Broadway card here, so queen, seven, deuce, as you can see. I like the idea of when we go to bet in position, anything that we're going to bet with, one sizing strategy to simplify it for us. It should work fine on most every board. If we go 2/3, it's really going to keep things, like I said, it's going to keep us unpredictable. It's going to be hard to range us when we do this because we're going to be doing this with hands that are pushing an incredible amount of equity, hands that aren't pushing quite as much. I actually think this is a really good candidate for a bet, though, and I'll talk about different types of aces in this spot and other hands in my range real quick. So the reason I like bet here is, A, it applies a lot of pressure onto this player who still has this player left to act in the hand as well, but I do not have, excuse me, guys, I don't have any backdoor flush draws. You can see how I have ace-10 of hearts. There's no heart on the board. If I had ace-10 of clubs here, I think there's a strong argument to actually check this hand back a lot, especially if I didn't have the pair blocker. That's kind of important on a board like this, and I'll talk about that in a sec. But when you have a hand that you think is kind of close between bet and check, a hand that if you bet this and you face check raise, you know that you want to be able to continue. And that's fine. These guys are going to act very much more ABC than they should from out of position with check raises. So we should be doing more bet folding anyway, as I alluded to. But if you have a hand that still doesn't really want to face a check raise, but you feel like it's good enough to try to get to showdown or realize some equity in position by controlling the pot by checking back, you're going to want to make sure that it plays well on future streets and it has a reason to check back. If I have a backdoor nut flush draw here with a hand that's kind of middling, it's a little bit better considering that it's a drier, disconnected texture. There shouldn't be as many two pairs or better combos. So especially when I have a set or two pair blocker in the 7 there, and I don't have a backdoor flush draw to realize equity with, the only real backdoor I have is really the backdoor gutter here. But because I have the 7 blocker and I do not have a backdoor flush draw, I actually would like to end this hand now, because if I check this hand back and all of a sudden we get a 10 of spades, or I guess a 10 is not the best example, but like let's say a king of spades turn, that's not great. We probably, not only have we now possibly fallen into second or third place with like a lot of like king queen combos or king king, but we also have like a lot of pair plus draw combos that are now available with like a backdoor flush draw being available. So it makes more sense for us to check back a lot of the middling stuff that would like to realize equity and see more cards, but it makes all the sense in the world on the other side of that to bet when we have pair blockers that block sets in two pairs with a hand that doesn't really want to see a lot of runouts here. So our plan is to bet 2/3 and we'll bet fold. Now let's talk about other parts of my range. We would bet 2/3 with the sets. And if I did it with bottom set here and I got check raise, it's such a dry board. There aren't really wraps or straight draws available, no flush draws. I would just honestly assume that we're up against top or middle set way too often and we would bet fold. If I bet with middle set, we probably are just going to have to stack off, hope that we're not up against top set. That'd be nice, obviously, when you have bottom middle set to have a queen in your hand somehow. If you don't, it's fine. Other combos would be like obviously top two on a board like this could stack off. You'll get some opponents, some recreational opponents in the live low to mid stakes PLO games that they'll overvalue a hand like queen deuce or seven deuce, for example. As far as some other bluffs that make sense, anything that blocks a seven or even like a bad queen X hand. So for example, let's say I had king, king, queen, 8, and I didn't have backdoor flush draws. It makes a lot of sense to actually bet that hand because it doesn't really improve over multiple streets. But it does block a lot of queen X combos that your opponent would continue with where they have quite a bit of equity. So anytime you have like a pair blocker and you have a pocket pair in your hand, those actually make for really good bluffs. Future straight or flush blockers are really good ones to have as well. We'll talk about that more over at archcitypoker.com where we'll have a lot more situations like this that we go over and we kind of cover everything in depth. But for the sake of keeping this video shorter, I think 2/3 is the way to go here and a plan for a bet fold. Now the plan is if they call, then we're going to be able to evaluate and know where we're at. Likely they're not check calling with a lot of two pairs or better. We'll have to see what kind of turn comes if we think it gives them like a lot of two pair combos. If it's a little drier, we could probably bet again with aces just as like another bet fold strategy. But if we clean it up and we get heads up, we don't love the turn, then a lot of times we can just check back and we're able to show down and control the pot that way. So we'll go ahead and bet 2/3. We get one call. Now the 8 could be a card he has. There could be some combos of like 8 high rundowns in there. That's why it's good to have the 7 though, because he shouldn't really have as many combinations of two pairs or better now. Now, is this a hand though that we wanted to play for stacks with starting out on the flop? Not necessarily, but with only one more card to come, it's not as big of a problem to let him realize equity here. So really, if you think about this situation, as my cat messes with my green screen, what we did on the flop is we cleaned up equity by betting, getting one player out of the hand, and now we just have one player left to act. We have position, and there's only one card to come. So yes, are we going to sometimes have to let players realize a little bit of equity? We are. I don't want to bet and necessarily face a raise here if they are capable of bluffing, but that's the thing that you have to keep in mind. If they are capable of bluffing here, then you're going to have to check back the spot a lot. If they're not capable of bluffing and they're capable of calling with worse hands, then if we think it's very likely that they don't have two pairs or better, we want to polarize and we want to keep betting in this spot. So we're going to pot it here. And if we get jammed on, we're honestly just go to fold, guys. So let's take a look and see what he has. So he did turn two pairs, and that'll happen sometimes. But I think that the idea behind the way to play this is, yes, a lot of players would say, in theory, we are way overplaying this hand. But given how our opponents play, how straightforward they are, how often they're going to allow us to force them to under-realize equity when they're out of position, this is the way we want to go with more exploitative bet folding in position. If we have reason to check back and realize equity, then we can go ahead and do so. But if we have all the reason in the world to keep betting against really straightforward opponents like this, then that's the route we're going to want to take. So if you guys have any questions or comments, go ahead and let me know. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. That helps us out a lot. Come visit us over at archcitypoker.com where I will show you a lot more about how this strategy works. And obviously there'll be a lot more spots that we go over in depth, and it'll really help build your guys' confidence to start beating these live low to mid stakes PLO games that you might not honestly know what you're doing in. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks.